So some high school girls picked the wrong girl to pick on this time when one of them turns out to have telekinetic powers. That's basically the story, of course, of Carrie. I'm John Chang with Dan Edmonds.
Hi there.
And the thing that I was thinking about was that the high school setting tends to be, used a lot for horror and stuff like that, and especially in the 80s. And I was just kind of wondering, what is it about, that kind of between like maybe like the audience that it's trying to reach, or just maybe it's just a well of, different stories, I guess.
Well, it's, I guess there's a certain sort of vulnerability because it's still kind of about children, basically, even though they're often kind of teenagers who are old enough to have sex. But I think also it's, when you're young, you are very kind of risk averse. You don't really care.
Right,
you're going to go and do whatever. So it makes you more easy to sort of write someone who's going to just sort of randomly open a closet and think someone's playing a joke and get stabbed and things like this. So I don't know. That's kind of my interpretation of it. And of course, it's an excuse just to get sort of young, attractive people on the screen. So
yeah, and the other thing that we'll kind of get into a bit with these is that often they have older actors playing the high school students. So in other words, they're usually like actors in their 20s, because of the whole the labor laws, whatever, stuff like that like they can't actually have actual teens playing these teenagers and stuff, working the same hours and everything like that. So they'll have like 20-something actors that are relatively new and stuff, and kind of standing in as your high school students and stuff.
no, I mean, I think it's God knows. I mean, how many movies there must be written about either college dorms or schools with teenagers, especially horror movies, just like innumerable. So I have a question for you this week.
Okay.
And that is this the best Stephen King adaptation?
Wow, that's a tough one. It's definitely one of the best, that's for sure, and stuff. I would say, like one of the ones that we're going to definitely be talking about, of course, is The Shining. And that one, I think, is like really like hard to kind of compare, like it's almost like an apples and oranges kind of comparison. And the other one that I really love as well, it's one of my personal favorites, The Dead Zone and stuff. It's yet another one that kind of, and that one kind of spun off into a series. And so again, it's yet another different one that has telekinetic or psychic, I guess, powers in that one.
Psychic, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched The Dead Zone, actually. So maybe we can find an excuse to somehow kind of roll that into a series or something.
Absolutely. That's an easy one.
I mean, for me, this is definitely, I think it's either this or The Shining, but I would say this is closer to the source material. So this might be my favorite Stephen King adaptation, I think, possibly.
Yeah, one of the things that I just was realizing now, and we'll kind of talk about a little bit in the, one of the remakes and stuff, is that apparently there's like and I kind of vaguely remember from the novel, stuff like that there was like some meteor shower at the opening and stuff. And then this one, the 1976 actually opens with the volleyball game, which I thought was like kind of a really good way to kind of introduce you to the different characters and kind of, right away we're seeing how they treat Carrie and stuff like that. But the meteor scene was kind of like something I vaguely remember. And then it's funny how like one of the first remakes, the 2002, actually they do like kind of start off with that and stuff.
Right. Yeah, I completely missed that actually.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I just sort of had other expectations, but yeah, I didn't check the meteor shower at all.
It's a weird thing.
By.
Yeah. And it's something that like I only kind of thought about again was because I was watching before, us talking stuff, this 40th anniversary kind of, panel that like they kind of brought that up again and stuff. And they talked about how they had shot something, with it and that the scene wasn't working. So they cut it out and stuff. And I felt like ultimately the final cut was, better because of it. I felt like, kind of right away getting into how the girls tease her and that kind of thing. I thought that was a much stronger opening.
Yeah, I mean, the opening scene of Brian De Palma's Carrie is like, it wastes no time at all. And it's like, this just from the netball, they're brutally bullying her. Yeah. And then, the shower scene, my memory of this movie was like, I thought it took a lot longer to get to that, but I didn't realize it's like the shower scene is where you start.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just within minutes you're feeling incredibly sorry for her,
Right.
and it's pretty tragic. But there's this kind of, there's this weird sort of symbolism with blood and women, and in this movie, in so much as obviously this is her with her mother never telling her about her period,
Right.
but it's almost like the blood has a relation to knowledge or awareness in a way, because and it's almost like an echoing of a sort of a birth, because in a way you almost feel like this story is starting and this character is kind of being born in sort of like the water's broken when she's at the shower, and then you almost feel like she's sort of just awoken to her power, and it all comes to the fore in that first scene.
And I feel like that's kind of what also is symbolized by that, is the fact that like, there's this kind of discussion about how like different, in fact, Firestarter, I think, is one of the ones that talks about it, that like when apparently you hit adolescence and stuff, that your powers are awakened and stuff. And so it's like kind of this combination of where it's one is, like you said, that the kind of different symbolism with blood and kind of, life and that kind of thing, but also just this kind of, transition, from, kind of childhood to adulthood. And I guess part of the whole controversy too is the fact that like she's, like she's a senior in high school, she's about to graduate, and then she's finally had a, period and stuff, whereas, all the other girls, part of, how they're teaching her and where they're coming from is the fact that like, they've already had it, like kind of, like now, like kind of, this girl's so weird that she hasn't even had a period until now, that kind of idea and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredibly kind of cruel scene. It's just horrendous, but it's but there's also this kind of element of, I think, sort of how women are portrayed, or what sort of how society treats women is kind of echoed in this movie, because here's a woman who's been woefully misinformed about the facts of life. And what happens? All the other women attack her for her awakening of sexuality. In a way, it's a very kind of, kind of very cynical and slightly depressing scene in that respect. In that you wouldn't, there's not one single person who's there to help her except for the teacher, obviously, but none of her peers anyway, which is kind of
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how we kind of originally was thinking about starting off our discussion that way, that typically we see boys kind of being really cruel and stuff like that, and we've kind of talked a little bit about on the show that sometimes girls can be some of the cruelest and stuff, and so it's funny how like on the one hand we have what could be a very exploitative scene, like the shower scene, or like and stuff. In fact, like starting off with like full frontal nudity, like I'm surprised there's not more controversy about that. Like I don't remember ever hearing, like kind of that. But at the same time, it doesn't feel that way for some reason. It just kind of like it feels very like organic to the scene and stuff. And then it just kind of then from there, like kind of we're going right into the the first signs of the horror, I guess, if you will.
Well, I think that's why it's so great and so subversive, because you're immediately thinking, oh, it's lots of nubile naked teenage girls, but it soon descends into a kind of bloody, desperate, kind of horrific scene of bullying and angst in minutes. So
and that's the horror, right? It's the like these kind of girls, the way they're treating one of the quote unquote their own and stuff. I mean, that's what's interesting. It's like it's not like kind of, it's not, rather than being kind of some monsters or like kind of, and the gore, right, is like kind of it's a period. It's not gore as in slashing whatever and stuff like that. And then the violence is them lashing out at her, like kind of like kind of like with the tampons and kind of berating her and stuff like that. And that's like kind of just it's interesting how none of the like you said, it's very subversive in that none of the typical horror elements are what they normally are and stuff. It's all these other things.
And one thing I'd completely forgotten was that the gym teacher, even though she kind of saves Carrie, the fact that she then kind of like lashes out at Cris, that character, by slapping her in front of all of the other girls, and you realize there's obviously some very messed up kind of raising of Chris's character by the way she sort of has her relationship with John Travolta's character, in that, obviously she loves drama and kind of like, basically one minute she's kind of like berating him and calling him a dumb shit, and next time she's coming on to him and everything. So it's, she's a pretty extreme character as well.
Right. And by today's standard too, like, just, there's a whole lot of slapping going on with the teacher and stuff like that. You'd never see that nowadays. So I think that that's one thing that I guess, we can really tell the time difference and stuff, is that, like, in fact, I'm trying to think of where, I guess in the other remakes, there is still some slapping, but not as much as the original, though. There's a lot of slapping going on.
A whole lot of women slapping women and things like this. Yeah, it's a whole lot going on. For me, it's just, I was sort of immediately kind of blown away by the cast. I'd forgotten how many good actors there are in this movie. You got, Sissy Spacek. She got Oscar nominated for her role in this, as did Piper Laurie, who's, I'll get into her later, but that was a fantastic role. And of course, you got Nancy Allen from Robocop as Cris.
Yep.
And I'm trying PJ Souls from Halloween is one of the. And
she's once again a victim and not the final girl. It's always the victim and not never the final girl.
I know, right? John Travolta, funnily enough, I'd completely forgotten he was in this.
His first major role, I'd forgotten also as well. And we've of course talked about him in Taking of Pelham 1 2 3.
Yeah, right. And I mean, just William Katt as possibly, the most likable person ever in this movie.
And one of the ironic things too is that, like, as Star Wars fans, one of the things that we may or may not know is that, like, they had, like, George Lucas had done the casting of Star Wars side by side with, kind of Brian De Palma and stuff like that. So in other words, they would have the actors coming in and read for both roles. Like,
wow.
So we could have had a Sissy Spacek, Princess Leia, and a William Katt, Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I was going to say,
universe.
He's clearly the Luke Skywalker, isn't he? If he was going to be, an
who knows?
alternate version.
Maybe in like a Watchmen universe, there's, like, that's what happened and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, sort of production wise, because I suppose this is 1 year before Star Wars, but the novel was 1974. So this is kind of like The Shining, in the novel came out, and within 2 years there was been quite a high profile adaptation made.
Right. The other thing kind of worth mentioning about the novel itself was that, like, Stephen King had thrown away his, first draft and stuff, and his wife picked it out of the trash and said, hey, I kind of want you, see if you can sell this and stuff. And so again, like, in an alternate universe, that may not have happened, and we would, who knows what Stephen King would have been doing. He may never have kind of had the rise right to his popularity and stuff like that, if that didn't have that first break as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, I think, she said he was just really struggling, trying to think. He just didn't think he was convincing, writing from a perspective of a teenage girl. But there's also one other quote which I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it was when Stanley Kubrick asked him about The Shining, and they were talking about whether they believed in God, and of course Stanley Kubrick said he didn't, and and Stephen King said something along the lines as well, people fear hell more than they fear death itself, which is very telling for the mother's actions later on in the movie.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole bag of wrong there, the mother. But
So, other, like, next to the cruelty with the kids and stuff like that, I think that's the other kind of major themes that, like, like, after she's done, after a day of that, whatever, so Carrie goes home, right, and stuff, and she has to face a mother who just yet again lumps on, her set of abuse and stuff. So, like, not only did she just, take all this stuff, from not knowing about her period and stuff like that, and she's asking her mom, why didn't you tell me stuff? And then, the mother's like, it's calling it a sin, and again, almost all the things that, like, we could possibly imagine as kind of being a nightmare of like a, you know, like kind of how a poor girl could be experiencing her, you know, like kind of the beginning, right, of her, you know, kind of passage, you know, into womanhood and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, you know, this is again a woman who's sort of like denying her own womanhood, I suppose, and punishing herself for even giving birth, you know, and having sex in the first place. So it's it's and everything else after that is kind of just a denial and a punishment either to herself and to her daughter, really. I mean, it's
and that's something we do see, like you know, more than like kind of healthy, you know, religious beliefs, whatever. More often than not, especially in horror movies, we see like that you know, the extremists, right? Like, you know, it's almost like kind of that the association in the horror world, if you will, is that like, you know, if you have any kind of faith and stuff like that, you're going to be like a fanatic or like, you know, somebody who's going to like kind of basically, you know, kind of warp kind of the beliefs into something that where it's trying to manipulate others and to kind of, you know, like where like in the faith system, whatever, that like, you know, it's only hellfire, brimstone, and there's no peace and love, and you know, kind of there's none of that. No,
I mean, and it swings both ways, really, because you could be like the priest in The Exorcist and actually in Amityville are both kind of so religious on the other end of the spectrum that they're the only ones who believe that there's something supernatural going on and will actually deal with it. So it's there's no middle ground, no nice kind of country vicars in any horror movie. Or if they are, they probably get killed off fairly quickly. But I mean, I have to say though, I thought Piper Laurie's performance in this was pretty incredible. Yeah, and I'd forgotten how good it was. Her voice is amazing, like the way she kind of channels, you know, a preacher almost in her. Some of her lines, but I mean, I love some of the lines she's got, and I've written a few down because I just think they're just so funny. Just like, you know, first it's the blood, then the boys come smelling to see where the smell comes from. I mean, what a line! And then I can see your dirty pillows and
dirty pillows, yes,
yeah.
And apparently, like she was trying to go about it in the comedic way. That's apparently like in the panel that she was saying that, you know, like or like, you know, that's because she had known Brian De Palma was kind of having this kind of thing where having a warped sense of humor or whatever and stuff, and some, you know, some his approach to things, and so that's what she was trying to do. And at different times, like, you know, he'd like kind of reel her back and say, you know, like we're trying to sell it that like this is a pretty, you know, bad scene and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh man, the other one I really like is kind of the one where she said, you know, the stink of that dirty roadhouse whiskey on his breath, and I liked it. You know, that was just, I thought that was just too funny. But yeah, I can see exactly. I mean, it just needs to be just like a smidgen more. And I mean, I already found it pretty hilarious. I can see why Brian De Palma enjoyed it. But yeah, insanely good.
And that's the other thing too, that like, you know, besides like kind of just, you know, that kind of view of religion in horror movies is the fact that like, you know, yet again, we have this kind of connection with like sin and sex and stuff like that. Like, in other words, you know, there's no kind of like, oh, you know, kind of sex is part of the natural process, or whatever. We've kind of seen this in, you know, multiple horror movies now and stuff like that. But, you know, like kind of where like after the sex scene, right, is like basically the people are going to get killed or whatever. And then in this one, it's like kind of the people that are, you know, kind of having, you know, different sex, whatever, they're the ones that kind of, you know, it's going to lead their demise and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, no one really escapes here, innocent or sort of guilty in this one in the end. I mean, I think that's what's kind of so different about it, definitely for the time. You know, it didn't really matter who was left in that gym. Everyone's going to get it.
Well, what did you think of that though? Actually, like, you know, like Miss Collins, who like, you know, like in the other movies, like they go back to the original name for the novel, Miss Desjardins, stuff like that. It seemed like that. I don't know. Like to me, it kind of seemed out of character that like, and again, major spoiler, that like she, you know, like kind of was laughing along with the rest of the people, stuff like that. I mean, and then of course she ended up, you know, being one of the victims and stuff. and I felt that was like very out of like kind of the frame or like kind of what I kind of imagined to be her character arc.
Do you mean in the original?
Yes.
I see. For me, that's not her actually laughing.
Okay.
That is Carrie projecting her paranoia onto, and her own mind playing that everyone's laughing at her. That's why you've got this kind of weird segmented shot with it all kind of spinning around, because I think this is just her relaying, living out that sort of horrible realization that her mother was right about
that everybody's
what was going to happen. Yeah. So I don't think in reality Mrs. Collins is laughing, because it cuts very quickly to her looking quite serious. So I never really, I didn't see it that way really.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what kind of, for me, like, seems strange. I didn't, like, kind of, see it that way with, like, kind of, like you said, the way the shot was handled. That, but I can see that, though. And whereas, like, the other, in the remakes, it's kind of a lot more literal and stuff like that, where they, don't have her, she's not one of the ones laughing and stuff like that. In fact, she's just, like, terrified and everything. And that's really what they show. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's actually what's so, I mean, it's, in a way, it kind of speaks a little bit to this preconception about women's emotional states in a way, because it's kind of like, oh, when a woman gets angry, well, everyone's going to die. It's kind of a little bit of a subtext I kind of feel is a little bit said in Carrie. But I mean, it is kind of quite, and you don't often see in movies where someone who's sympathetic, or even a number of characters that are sympathetic to even someone that's troubled, ends up getting so sort of brutally finished off. So that, I mean, I think is really interesting in this movie. And I think as well, a lot of the pacing and some of the effects, like there is this long, prolonged silence right after the bucket drops. And, Sissy Spacek's performance there is just, incredible, otherworldly. And you can see why she got, nominated for an Oscar. Yeah. She's so good, because she's so damaged all the way through this movie, and so kind of like, so portrays such a lack of self-esteem, and it's crippling and tragic that you're rooting for her. But then when she finally lets loose, you're kind of there just clapping along, going, yeah, let him have it. So, yeah.
It's funny how, like, this is like actually, I think, like kind of, I mean, she had other kind of relatively minor roles and stuff, but this was like kind of her breakout roles and everything. And and I think, like kind of, it's that thing we've talked about different times that, like, with the different filmmakers that in the casting, that they kind of recognize something about the actress or actor, that like there's this talent that like it's just there. And so I think that's what's interesting. We have so many these actors that, like, they're, even John Travolta, he had been on television but no really major film roles and stuff. And so there's just this kind of, like you said, all this talent that, like, they like now we know them for who they are and stuff like that. But Brian De Palma, like, he kind of something about these different actors, he saw like kind of what their, I guess, potential was and stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, and you can't really fault any of their performances really. Everyone is really great in this movie, and you can see they all went on to do, well, varying degrees of success, but quite a lot of success afterwards. But made me realize actually, William Katt is. I feel, I mean, he's so good in this, and you realize he should have got more major roles really after this, because he's brilliant as Tommy Ross.
Yeah, he just, for some reason never really seemed to kind of have any, like, huge breakout success and stuff. He did have the television series Greatest American Hero, was one of my personal favorites and stuff. Right, but other than that, he hasn't had much. Yeah.
Likewise, the character, like the actor who played Sue, she didn't really do much. There's bits and pieces. She's had a lot of
Irving,
I imagine. Yeah. Amy Irving, that's right. Yeah. So but of course you got Edie McClurg from Ferriss Bueller and various other.
That
things.
was a really
one of the.
I totally had not noticed her when I watched it before, but then this time around I was like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, and the other interesting one for me was Betty Buckley, who Mrs. Collins, in that she had a huge break in her career, but then all of a sudden she's turned up in Split, and various other things. So that was kind of
Yeah.
interesting. But anyway, yeah, it's difficult not to talk. We don't often talk about the cast so much, but I was really kind of interested in this one because there's just so many kind of famous people in it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I think it's great all round. I mean, so the other thing that, going back to Piper Laurie briefly, because it's just such a weird scene, and now you talk about Brian De Palma's sort of twisted sense of humor, but it's almost like she is so sort of critical and punishing of everything in like modern society, and is so devout that when she does actually get killed at the end by Carrie in exactly the same position as Saint Sebastian, which is also kind of interesting. It's almost orgasmic. It's almost like this is like that final release that it's almost like she's lived her entire life for that moment of when she will be delivered to the Lord. And it's so kind of over the top, that scene, but it's
definitely one of the most memorable parts of the movie and stuff. So
oh, totally, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's a parable for being overly restrictive with your children and what might happen. You know, I mean, I guess the telekinetic power is, I mean, it's you know, it's an expression of when this person has just been pushed to the absolute breaking point, but also a point where it's actually a sort of a symbol of kind of empowerment in the movie in a way. It's the way I saw it. It's like whenever she's actually taking a stand is when the powers come out, so to speak.
And it's, you know, like we've talked before about like kind of revenge movies and stuff. I mean, this is like one of the ultimate, you know, revenge movies where like, you know, like no guns are needed. I mean, you know, it's basically, you know, her unleashing her like, you know, telekinetic powers to the nth degree.
An interesting connection there. The guy that did the music for this, Pino Donaggio, was hired by Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, I think, to do Grindhouse and stuff like this.
Nice.
And he's and it's kind of, it's one of those ones. It's got this very sort of soft, lilting kind of theme that goes all the way through it. That's just punctuated by those, you know, the sharp string stabs and things like this. It's very effective, I think. And also, interestingly, he did the music for Mr. Robot more recently as well.
Oh, interesting. I was gonna say though that like it really matches like kind of the soft lighting that he uses, like kind of, you know, where like different times you swear it's like kind of almost like a dream-like sequence and stuff, and which makes you wonder sometimes where, you know, like you talk about the perception and stuff, and then so I'm wondering different times like how much of it is like kind of, you know, like all in Sue Snell's kind of, you know, she's dreaming about it, right? Because, you know, kind of, again, major spoiler alert, ultimately it's this kind of, you know, like kind of, you know, bad, like the dream turning a nightmare that she kind of wakes up from and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that last final scene is still one that kind of like, I remember seeing it this time and I was like, I was obviously pretty young, but I was like, I'm not going to be sleeping well tonight. But yeah, I mean, that scene is just genius. And I think there's just such a sort of a pervasive tragedy in Carrie in that she's bullied in life. And then even when she actually has it takes a supernatural power for her to even sort of get the upper hand on anyone. But even then it still brings about her demise. And then she's still being bullied in death, even with people writing, you know, Carrie White burn in hell on her gravestone. Right. And it's this kind of thing that you can't even escape this stuff in death was like really like mega tragedy on this in this movie. But I think but I do feel in a way though, I mean, this is almost, I think Sissy Spacek's almost a victim of her own success in this movie, because whenever I see Sissy Spacek, I just think of Carrie, you know, and a bit like Elizabeth Berkley with Showgirls. It's like, in a way, I mean, I don't want to, you know, it obviously didn't win any Oscars or get nominated for any, but in its own way, I mean, it's a really super intense performance that is really defining. And I kind of feel this is one of those roles that, you know, like Harrison Ford is always going to be Han Solo. Sissy Spacek will always be Carrie. And etc. So
Yeah, I mean, she ultimately did win an Oscar. Obviously not for this one and stuff like that. But it's funny how like that. We've kind of mentioned it also before that like horror movies just in general just do not win Oscars and everything. The exception being Silence of the Lambs and everything. And even that one wasn't really like a pure horror. It's more psychological drama. That kind of thing and stuff as well.
But I think the other interesting thing for me is, seeing this as a Brian De Palma movies, you forget that a lot of these great directors who went on to produce, some of the cinema classics started out in horror. Like Steven Spielberg, Jaws is basically a horror movie.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anyone says, E.T. is more or less a horror movie as well. It's just got a not very scary monster, but everything is shot and, it's the pacing is like that of a horror movie almost for the first hour. And, Brian De Palma did something that was a bit like Psycho before this. I think it was called Sisters. And he did this. He did Body Double as well, which was another horror movie, famously repeatedly mentioned in American Psycho. But, and then went on to do lots of other things. But, I think any aspiring directors are watching, unlikely, but still, maybe start out in horror. It's
yeah, and the thing that we've kind of mentioned before is like for different actors, it's not necessarily kind of the end of the career if you start off in horror and stuff. And we talked before about kind of Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger famously starting off in the Texas Chainsaw, not even a remake but a sequel and stuff, and then ending up to have break out or to really go on to greater success and stuff. So
yeah. So the only other thing I wanted to mention in this in terms of symbolism, which I thought was kind of interesting, was again this kind of and you're going back to your point about a dream, is in dreams houses and buildings are often like a representation of someone's ego,
right? And
then you kind of see in this one, even though Carrie is kind of come into her own and beaten, killed everyone who stands in her way, more or less. But this kind of it's almost like this complete collapse of her ego, because now her powers have meant that she's destroyed any kind of like anchor points in her own life. And so it was quite interesting to have the house. I've forgotten that the house just kind of crumples in on her.
Right.
But again, it's kind of like that's the kind of thing that happens in dreams, which is also really interesting given Sue's kind of what happens with her at the end there. Because you do kind of just think maybe there was just a fire at the prom and Carrie was a bit of a weird girl and this is all kind of made up in Sue's head maybe, or something like that.
So what's called should we kind of go on to talk about the remakes?
Yeah.
So what's called we really won't cover the 2002 remake. It was a television kind of remake and stuff like that. And what's interesting though, I think is that Bryan Fuller was the one kind of who wrote it, and he's better known for being involved with the Star Trek franchise, more recently Discovery and stuff. Angela Bettis, though, she plays a really convincing Carrie. So next to like what's called of course Sissy Spacek, I mean she does hold a candle to it, like where she did really get a lot of recognition for it and stuff. I think though, on the other hand, like it just kind of the overall production though, like they pretty much hit the same beats and stuff. Really didn't do anything that kind of was a standout, except for the fact like they did start off with the meteor shower or something like that, which is kind of again a really kind of strange way to start, and especially after we kind of talked about and kind of saw how effective the volleyball game / shower scene was and stuff. But they did kind of transition to that. Kind of another worth mentioning was a couple of two Battlestar Galactica alumni, future alumni are in it. This time, Edie McClurg is Sue Snell. She's known as Dee, who's the comms officer in BSG. And then, the ill-fated Tommy Ross in this one was the ill-fated Zach Adama in the BSG. So apparently this actor, Tobias Mailer, has a thing for being chosen to be the one to get killed off right away, I guess, and stuff.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm glad we're not covering it in detail because I didn't watch it. But it's interesting. Yeah, a few interesting points there. I didn't realize the BSG connection. But yeah.
This time around, I actually had watched this one first because I had seen like the original way back when and stuff like that. Because I wanted to kind of, you know, how does this hold up to the original? Like, and I watched the original last and stuff, and then I watched the other remake, the 2013 next and everything like that. And we'll talk about it like pretty soon. The thing that I also felt like this one did bring more to the surface is, you know, in the kind of mother-daughter relationship is this idea of like, you know, and I feel like for some reason, you know, this actor, you know, Angela Bettis, she really nailed it. That like this idea of, you know, wanting to get somebody's approval who really doesn't really deserve it in a way and stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, like Patricia Clarkson in this case, she's playing the mother, Margaret, and stuff like that. And they like something about the way this relationship between these two actors, they really bring that out. That like, you know, you know, what happens when like, you know, the person who you're really seeking approval just, you know, they I mean, if anything, like, you know, you should be running away screaming and stuff.
Oh, there's something so infuriating about watching a child trying to appeal to a parent that is blatantly kind of inconsiderate and wrong in so many ways. It's very frustrating to see. It means basically watching child abuse, more or less. It's just horrendous to watch. You know, it's yeah.
And we have different standards of abuse nowadays. Like, you know, like the stuff that we're seeing now, like, you know, like versus like what's called quote unquote called abuse and stuff. You know, like if somebody's denied their PlayStation, we call it abuse right nowadays.
I know, right?
And you know, meanwhile, like, you know, here's this person like being locked in the closet and like, you know, and they really heightened that too in this version and stuff as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess they definitely heightened it in the 2013 one. Not only, and I thought what was interesting about it was not only did they kind of heighten it for Carrie, but also the mother. Like they've sort of, you know, that was a really interesting thing. This kind of self-harming mother who kept on kind of skewering herself with things at various points during the movie was. So I should say, yes, Julianne Moore is the mother in the 2013 version.
Right.
Who does? I mean, I just missed Piper Laurie. She was just so much more fun to watch than Julianne Moore, who plays it very straight, you know.
And I feel like, you know, like we talked about before about casting decisions and stuff. And I feel like personally that I don't want to see Julianne Moore as this kind of abusive mother. I mean, you know, I much rather prefer her in these roles where, you know, they may be dramatic and stuff, but she's, you know, like kind of a I can't even say normal, but just kind of just a woman that like, you know, is more of a hero, I guess, than stuff, than almost like a villain.
Well, I think I often associate Julianne Moore with being quite an intelligent character normally.
Oh, okay.
So I think, you know, it's a hard sort of reach for me to think she would be that delusional about herself and her own kind of warped faith to act like that. So, yeah, that was what I had a hard time with, and I kind of, in a way, it kind of felt like, well, we're going to try and make her more believable and less kind of over the top like Piper Laurie. So we'll make her self-harming to kind of fill in the gaps of the performance, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So
yeah, it did smack more of like a mental abuse kind of situation than just straight delusional and stuff. And
yeah, which I don't think is as effective really, because you want that kind of. The parent needs to be kind of completely wholly in their right mind in a way that they're in their convictions that what they're doing is right, because it makes the suffering of Carrie that much more heightened, I think.
Right.
And of course, it's this being our Chloe Grace Moretz season of remakes, who's, you know, the new queen of remakes, it seems. She's playing Carrie. And what did you think of her performance in this?
I gotta tell you that for me, like it's pretty unbelievable that like here she's 16-year-old playing, you know, granted, like, you know, we're talking about high school characters, but as you mentioned, that most of the times you have, you know, the actors who are, in fact, you know, Sissy Spacek was 27 when she played the role, so she had already, you know, even though she hadn't had major roles and stuff, but you know, like kind of, you know, she was still able to kind of play a convincing, kind of teenager and everything. But like I feel like for this one is the fact that like Chloe's Moretz has got this responsibility, right, of carrying she's the star and stuff, and I feel like she does more than a capable job and stuff.
Yeah, I thought she was very believable, and I thought the that when she's trying to appeal to her mother and things like this was very believable. Actually, she had it, it was very, very well done. And I think actually both her and Julianne Moore worked pretty well as the. I mean, I think she worked better than Julianne Moore did in some respects, to be honest. And yeah, she's pretty awkward. The problem is, I just don't think she would have been bullied. I think she's a bit too attractive in it, really. No. I just don't think you would have been bullied that much.
Well, this is yet the typical problem, right, that we've seen yet and again with remakes, that we have to have the MTV effect and everything. Because, look at Sue Snell, right? She's Gabriella Wilde, who most recently is the assistant for Pedro Pascal in Wonder Woman 84 and
That's
stuff.
Right.
So she's probably like the least believable Sue Snell out of the whole bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Although the interesting casting for me was Cris is can't remember the actress name, but she is Angela Moss in Mr. Robot, and you can kind of see actually she does a pretty decent job in Carrie, I think, of portraying a kind of damaged, spoilt kid who can't quite get to grips with reality. I think she kind of does that pretty well, and you can see why they cast her in Mr. Robot afterwards, and that she did a good job in this. But I mean, the main, as I said, with all remakes, it's the usual suspects at play as to why it doesn't quite work. They've amped up the effects, and now rather than just a light bulb exploding, she's got telekinetic powers that Yoda would be jealous of. She's making things fly around. I'm surprised she can't. I mean, I thought when the mirror broke, she was gonna, and she starts making them float. I thought they're not gonna do it where she puts it all back and it all makes a perfect mirror again. Right. But they didn't, thankfully. But yeah, she's got stuff flying around her bedroom, and she's like, she's a Jedi in this. So it kind of, and that immediate, and she's doing all this. She does all the research and sort of awakens to her powers much earlier in this movie, and she's fusing locks and kind of smashing doors with her mind, and you're just like, you're kind of like some supernatural Jedi. It's hard to feel like that sorry and for someone in that. It's a bit like that. So
that's one thing we didn't really mention, though, actually, in the original, was that you felt like there was a progression of the powers and stuff. It was like kind of like as she became more and more aware of it, and then it kind of really tied back into the fact that, like, she in the shower was kind of like it almost like kind of everything kind of started with the fact that, like, she had her first period and stuff, and so she was making this transition and everything, and then the powers kind of just grew over time, and you kind of like where it was a light bulb, and then like it was I think something was like kind of sliding off the desk or something like that, whereas like in this one, in the remake, it's the whole desk moving right away and stuff, and there's kind of like
the water things exploding. I mean, it's full on. I mean, what I also really liked about the original and the actual prom scene is the fact that it's not so overplayed, in that she locks the doors, and then what I kind of liked was the fact that it's the fire hose that she kind of unravels and starts just spraying people, because it's kind of the sort of thing, in a way, I feel when they do that to protesters, it's kind of a way of humiliating them a little bit. It's kind of like, we're not going to really hurt you. We're just going to make you wet and make you fall over and things like this. So there's this kind of thing of like, I'm going to humiliate you with my actions. And then there's just like, there's such a cool scene where both of these sort of curtains of fire just go up behind her.
Yeah.
And then it's just like,
that's classic.
You're done. You're cooked. So for me, that's just like, it's much simpler, but just far more effective in a way.
Yeah, I mean, definitely was more striking, but with less. Like, kind of it was kind of like almost that the idea that, like, having all the capabilities of doing these dramatic things and stuff, you kind of didn't need it and stuff to kind of get the idea and stuff.
Yeah, and it looks a little more accidental rather than things sort of flying around and getting people and stuff. So I mean. And the thing is, like, Sissy Spacek, when she gets covered in the pig's blood, she just looks like a bucket's fallen on her, and it looks accidental. When it happens to Chloe Grace Moretz, she kind of looks like she's in a really cool Halloween outfit. It almost looked a bit too intentional, I felt. But yeah.
I tell you, like the expression also, like with Sissy Spacek, like it's probably, it felt like, you know, kind of the biggest transformation or most dramatic, you know, kind of where she's going from this mild manner kind of, you know, student that's been picked on, you know, kind of all her life and stuff like that, to like this kind of terrifying kind of like, you know, like it's more that it's her rage that's unleashed and stuff like that. And that's like kind of, you know, like it's not just even her like, you know, just kind of getting revenge and everything, but it's like her rage is like kind of, you know, become, you know, manifested, I guess, if you will, like kind of this, you know, that's what's being projected and everything.
Yeah. And I mean, in the remake, you've got the added humiliation of the video, which you don't have in the original, which I actually thought was a nice way of kind of piling on the cruelty a little bit to Carrie in this.
And definitely related to like kind of modern, you know, kind of cruelty of, social media and stuff. And
Yeah. And I mean, you know, for me, this is quite sort of prescient of various problems where people go nuts in school and shoot people and do sort of various things. It's like,
that's true.
You know, you underestimate how much of someone's entire world is kind of based around a school system. And so, yeah, it's sort of total humiliation and total revenge in this movie, really.
So what did you think of like Judy Greer though playing, you know, Miss Desjardins, which again, like kind of, it's funny how they went back to the name in the novel and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because she was quite indifferent, and so even though she's quite generally nice to Carrie, what I kind of liked was the lack of sympathy in the original gym teacher, in that she's pretty cruel to the other kids as well, even though she's nice to Carrie. And I mean, obviously she's not slapping kids, but I mean, she puts up with quite a lot before she suspends Cris at the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, but does she actually get spared, or does she? She
does in this one, yeah. So,
yeah.
So this one was like kind of not at all like kind of, you know, like you said before about like kind of being from Carrie's perspective. It's like kind of seems more like the
as it happens,
as it happened kind of thing, yeah.
I mean, I kind of, in a way, I still find the fact that they kill her off in the original more effective.
Okay.
Because it's kind of, it heightens the tragedy. It's like the only person who's really shown her any kindness. She's had such a hard time and she's so delusional that everyone must die, basically.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, better. I think Judy should have gone, in my opinion, but.
And then, you know, this is Ansel Elgort playing the, you know, Tommy Ross in this one and stuff. And I thought he did a decent job. He, you know, kind of went on to, you know, bigger success in the next couple movies of his, you know, Fault in Our Stars. And then, you know, more recently, 2017, Baby Driver and stuff. And I thought he did a really decent job as Tommy Ross and stuff, like where he was believable as a guy who, like, you know, is kind of talked into doing something he really didn't want to do, but then ends up, you know, actually liking the person and stuff. I thought that was convincing and stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty good. He was no William Katt though. But yeah, I mean, it was okay. I kind of felt though that you kind of feel the William Katt really brings Carrie round to actually like they're having a good almost relationship and fun in the evening. Okay. I didn't quite buy into that with the remake as much because I just don't think they really. Maybe the dialogue wasn't quite as good, or just maybe not quite as well delivered, or something like that. But yeah,
I thought in, you know, both cases though that like you really felt that, you know, like kind of can't these kids just have a good time and like, you know, can we just skip the pig's blood, like, you know, like I feel like in both cases though, like it did bring that out, like, you know, in the original and the remake, it did make it where like I was very sympathetic to the fact that like, you know, just maybe this won't happen this time. Maybe there won't be this kind of terrible thing that's going to, be the end all and stuff like that. I guess, yeah, I mean, that's really like kind of part of the whole thing, right? Is like kind of, the tragedy, like we talked before about the tragedy and the horror rather, and then the other kind of tragedy of it is that, like, everything seems like it's just going to be a nice kind of time, for this poor girl who's been tormented for once in her life. She's going to have a good night and just go home and stuff. But of course,
yeah. I mean, so let me ask you this though: is Carrie a scary movie by your account?
I think for me,
either version really.
Right. The horror is the cruelty of the people, stuff like that, and that's what's interesting. It's that, like, it's even though it's the supernatural elements, it's actually the human aspects that are the most horrifying and everything. Yeah. And the supernatural was actually like kind of when you're just kind of more or less, like you said, rooting for her to like kind of unleash her revenge. It's kind of, and that's what's interesting. It's actually the horror elements actually heightens the revenge aspect of it all.
For me, there's only one scary scene in Carrie.
Okay.
And that is where Sue Snell is in the dream sequence and she goes to lay the flowers down by the grave. That's the only scary scene in the entire movie for me.
Well, of course, being a remake, right? They had to have their spin on it. What did you think of?
Oh no! Like, why?
Oh, no.
Well, I mean, I thought what was okay. So they did something slightly different with the Sue character in that she's pregnant and Carrie kind of tells her, and there was sort of an interesting change. I don't know, in that she pushes Sue, kind of turns up randomly at her house at the end of the movie and
right
pushes her out because she realizes, oh, okay, my mother's kind of screwed me up as a baby, but let's protect this one because this child is innocent, so she must survive. Or there's kind of the impression I got. But I mean, did it add anything to the movie? Not really, in my opinion. And they could have. I felt like if you're going to do that with Sue at the end, then do something more interesting after Carrie dies, other than her sort of basically just going on an exposition thing of saying, oh yeah, she did really have telekinetic powers. It's not just me dreaming. So there we go. And then the gravestone cracks and I was like, oh, come on. Yeah. I don't know. What did you think? Sorry. Obviously you don't know my thoughts now, but
yeah, I mean, I felt like in the end, it didn't, like I said, it didn't really add anything to it. It just felt like they were just doing it to be different and stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's really my short version of it. That, like, I didn't really. It was like kind of like, why? What was really the purpose of stuff? I guess like kind of if you want to kind of really stretch it, there was the fact that, like, maybe they wanted to kind of tie it to the fact that, like, which is the whole kind of core part about as this as well, is the fact that, like, Carrie never really will go on, of course, to have a baby, stuff like that, and it's almost like we're that Sue, like, kind of is the continuation, like, because everybody else is dead and stuff like that, but this kind of like the new life is this child and stuff like that will come out of so something quote unquote good will come out of all this. I feel like that's kind of like, and again, I feel like that's a bit of a stretch, and again, like, is it really necessary? Does it really kind of, like, maybe it's like kind of just more of a Hollywood ending, if you will, and stuff then?
there was the wrong part of my brain wanted something much cheesier to happen at the end, in that she saves Sue Snell and we know that she's pregnant, and then we flash forward to Sue giving birth, and just as she's about to sort of like hold her baby, like the lights flash or something like that, or the something comes off the table and it's like zing 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 or something like that. That would have been really super cheesy, but I thought something like that could have happened, just something more than just a gravestone crack.
Right. It would have been more interesting and stuff. As cheesy as it would be, but it just felt like it. Yeah, that would have been more interesting than just, like you said. Yeah, how it ended and everything. So, any kind of thoughts as to, like, I don't know, like, we've seen, of course, that, like, sooner or later they'll do yet another remake and stuff. So,
of course.
Any thoughts as to, like, kind of what could possibly go wrong, kind of making yet another?
What could go wrong? Well, I mean, you could make it into a musical. you know, that would
And it's
be
been done.
one way. Oh, there's been a Carrie musical?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, Betty
interesting.
Buckley apparently has been in the Carrie musical and stuff like that. That's like one of the things she's kind of done or gone on to do. So.
Well, there you go. That's all my ideas.
There you go.
I don't know, short of a time travel version of Carrie or something like that, where she, I don't know, you could do a sequel where she comes back from the grave. I don't know. I'm sure it hasn't. There must have been one where they've done that.
They've done a sequel. Well, not Back from the Grave, but they did a sequel that like I'm not sure what the relation was of the. Let me see. Like for some reason, the other girl has the powers. Yeah, it just more just the fact that like it's another child that like, you know, is an outcast that then excuse me, that then the powers are unleashed somehow and stuff like that. But apparently Sue Snell is this guidance counselor in that one and stuff. So
telekinetic guidance.
So she's seen this before, so she recognizes the signs.
Yeah, so she recognized the signs. Yeah, exploding water coolers. Yeah, one thing that did occur to me while watching this was that, you know, what's so effective about Carrie is that she's a victim who's also a villain, and you feel sorry for her, and also, you know, well, if you were reading the book, maybe you'd be scared of her, but that's also that's actually quite a theme in a lot of other Stephen King movies as well, or books as well. Like Christine made me think of that, in that you're kind of really rooting for the main guy in that, because he's such an outcast who's being bullied and stuff like this, and his life is sort of transformed by this car that ends up, again, very much like Carrie, kind of, you know, leading to his demise. And in a way, you can kind of say the same is partially true for Jack Torrance in The Shining, maybe, in that he's a kind of a victim to the surroundings of the hotel or the ghosts, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's more of a stretch. Christine's much more of a kind of a closer comparison, though, I would have thought. Yeah, and a very underrated movie. I don't know if it's actually ever been remade, because that would give us an excuse to watch it. But okay, yeah, shame. But there you go. That's what we should do. Screw all this YouTube stuff. Let's go make a remake of Christine.
Right.
So,
so what's called, as you kind of mentioned, this was like yet another of our Chloe Moretz series. Coming up, we'll be watching Suspiria as well, and possibly the Eye. I guess we'll kind of discuss whether to cover that one, and because there's other remakes that Chloe has been in, including Addams Family and Dark Shadows, which, you know, I feel like maybe we might save those for other times and stuff. But and then towards the end of the month, we've got, of course, The Right Stuff, which we're kind of excited about discussing as well. So once again, I'm John Chang with Dan Edmonds, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the movies.